Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Monday night look back at a classic rock album on Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So today we're here to talk about a classic rock album. This one dates back more than 50 years now. About 55 years ago, maybe even longer, 57 years ago. But a great album, one of my favorite by the band, and we are talking about Revolver from the Beatles. See if I can get it over. Oh, that's better. I don't want to cover up the name. So you've got Revolver here. These are nice pencil drawings of all four members. Fantastic album. One of the best, one of my favorite Beatle albums as well. So lots of good stuff on here. But before we get too carried away, I'll just tell you that trying to figure out where to hold this. Yeah, hold it there. So this album was released on August the 5th, 1966. So that's 57 years ago. 57 years ago. EMI studio in London, about 35 minutes in length, on the Polyform Capitol Records label, produced of course by none other than George Martin. Okay, so, and of course the people appearing on this album, for those of you who have been missing the boat over the last 4 centuries or the last 4 or 5 decades: John Lennon on vocals, rhythm and acoustic guitars, harmonium, tambourine, some sound effects, hand clapping and finger snapping and that kind of stuff. We have Paul McCartney on vocals, bass, rhythm and lead guitar, as well as acoustic guitar. He also plays piano, clavichord, and does some hands and finger snapping as well. We have George Harrison doing vocals, lead, rhythm, acoustic guitar, bass, sitar, tambourine, maracas, and tambura. Tambura was the one I was almost forgetting. Also does the hand clapping and finger snapping as well. And then of course the drummer, Ringo Starr, also playing tambourine, maracas, cowbell, shaker, hand and finger snapping as well. And he does do the lead vocals as well as backing vocals, doing the lead part on the song Yellow Submarine. Okay, and then there's a virtual host of other musicians on this album, which I will tell you a little bit about as soon as I put on my bifocals. Okay, so you have, I'm just going to look for it because it's not where I thought it would be. Anyways, for the most part, I remember pretty much who was on it. So you got people like George Martin, who's playing a piano on some tracks on here. You have Brian Jones doing the ocarina, and backing vocals on Yellow Submarine as well. And there's a host of other people playing various instruments at different points in the album. Most of them fairly well-known people too. I just brought those two up because they were the two that came to mind. Also, you've got 14 tracks on this album, which is a fair number of tracks for this time period. Mind you, much shorter tracks than you normally would get on a progressive rock album or from bands that moving into the 70s. So you have basically Taxman with George Harrison doing the lead vocal part. This is the book that comes with it, by the way. Pretty much the same as the album cover, but it has like tons of stuff in here. This is the best part. It tells you all the stuff you need to know. You got Eleanor Rigby, another really classic, well-known Beatles tune of Paul McCartney vocaling it. You got I'm Only Sleeping with John Lennon. I Love You Too by George Harrison. Then Here and There and Everywhere with Paul McCartney on the vocals, of course. Yellow Submarine, that's the lone Ringo Starr vocal song on this album. that song was actually written by Lennon and McCartney for Ringo. She Said, She Said, John Lennon doing that one. Good Day, Sunshine, Paul McCartney. And Your Bird Can Sing, John Lennon. For No One, Paul McCartney. Dr. Robert, that's a cool song. That's a really deep kind of cut. I guess for the Beatles, there's no such thing as a deep cut, but it's not one of the first songs that comes to mind with the Beatles, Dr. Robert, but I like that one. John Lennon on the vocals there. I Want to Tell You, this is a George Harrison vocal song. Got to Get You Into My Life, of course, one of their big, more famous songs off of this album, along with the Eleanor Rigby, Paul McCartney singing that. And then you have the psychedelic, one of the most psychedelic songs by the Beatles, Tomorrow Never Knows, John Lennon on the vocals. This is probably one of my 2 or 3 favorite Beatles songs, hence the reason I like this album so much, other than the cover, which is fantastic. The music is fantastic, and I particularly love this song. It's where they play all the guitars and then play them backwards. So catchy, this album. Lots of really solid stuff. You're getting all kinds of different sounds too. So you're still getting some of your pop stuff like Taxman and Good Day Sunshine, but then you have things like Tomorrow Never Knows, Yellow Submarine, Here, There, and Everywhere. These songs are a little more psychedelic. Good Day Sunshine, another one a little bit more psychedelic than you normally would have got from them. At this point in time, they are moving full-fledged into the psychedelia. I think this album came out after Rubber Soul. I'm pretty sure it did. I think Rubber Soul was kind of the first one that went in that direction, and this one was the next one. And you got the very sad tale story about Eleanor Rigby, one of the great classic Beatles songs of all time. I'm just going to put the book back in here. Yeah, so this is a excellent album. Lots of stuff on here, lots of instrumentation, and of course a fair bit of additional musicianship from additional people. I just think this is one of the best Beatle albums. To be honest, there isn't really any bad Beatle albums. This one is just more towards the top of my favorites. So I hope you get a chance, take this out, play it. It's one of those Beatle albums that will never ever go away. For me, it's the one that I like to go to. This one, Rubber Soul, and Abbey Road are the 3 that I tend to go to more than others. But this one here lately has been really good, and I got a nice copy of it too, which is nice. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode of looking back at a classic rock album featuring the Beatles Revolver. If you did, please like and subscribe. It's much appreciated. And tell me which track on this album do you like the most, and what is your favorite Beatles album. Mine, I don't know if this is my favorite one, but it's certainly up there. So hopefully we'll get to see you next week on Look Back at a Classic Rock Album. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week. So take care and have a good night. Bye.